So we're going to go ahead and go over some additional vocabulary you should know. Again, I'm trying to break the vocabulary up because there's so much of it. Today's 727, and we're taking a look at this idea of more vocabulary for the foundations of geometry. Okay, so the first thing we're going to talk about are parallel lines. Parallel lines, if you have two lines that are equidistant at all points, they're said to be parallel lines. We tend to think of railroad tracks or those lines on roads. We have a notation for this, or you'd say that line AB is parallel to line CD. So these two bars means parallel to. Okay. Next we have perpendicular lines. Perpendicular lines, right? This is two lines that intersect specifically at right angles. So when you see this box, you know that means it's a right angle, which makes it 90 degrees. Okay, so that box right there means right angles or perpendicular lines. You got a notation for this? I could have segment AB is perpendicular to segment BC. So again, perpendicular is this capital upside down T. Now the next one does not have a special symbol or notation, but it's called skew lines. Skew lines are kind of hard to imagine, but it's two lines that never intersect and are not parallel. So they don't intersect and they're not parallel. So here on this box, if we're looking for skew lines, the top and the left edge here kind of make this line right here. And you can imagine if this were to extend infinitely in both directions. And then kind of here on the front of this box, there's this edge over here, kind of the front and then this side. So this line, again, you can imagine if it extended infinitely in both directions. Those two lines are never going to touch. They're not parallel, and they're not perpendicular, they're not intersecting, and they are skew lines. So this line going this way, and then this one coming up and down. They are not parallel, they will never intersect, and yet they are also, not parallel, and so they are skew lines. Another way to say this is it's two lines that can't be contained on the same plane. All right? So those are some special line sets that we should be familiar with and be comfortable with. All right, next we're going to talk about some angles that we should be familiar with too. A straight angle. All right. When we think of a straight angle, if we have a line with 3 points on it, we also have an angle, right? So here, this is an angle, and the measure of this angle is 180 degrees. Okay, so we know that a right angle is 90, a straight angle is 180. Okay. Now, adjacent just means next to. So again here, right, my pinky finger is adjacent to my ring finger. Okay, they're next to each other. That's all it means. Often we'll talk about this with angles that are next to each other. So adjacent just means next to. Okay, it's two words, sorry. Next to, all right. And with those two together, we can come up with this thing called a linear pair. A linear pair is when you have two angles that create a straight angle and are next to each other. So here, angle 1 and angle 2 are a linear pair. They're supplementary, they add up to 180, and they're adjacent. They share a common edge. Okay, so that's called a linear pair. All right. So anytime you see a linear pair, it means two angles that are adjacent and supplementary. And then finally, we've got what are called vertical angles. Okay? So vertical angles, we tend to think of vertical as being up, down, but that's not what it means in this instance. Okay? If we have two angles here, formed by intersecting lines, right? We have angle 1, 2, 3, and 4. Angle 1 and angle 3 are vertical angles, and vertical angles are always congruent. But likewise, angle 2 and angle 4 are vertical angles, so they're also congruent. We mark this on our picture using these lines, these arc lines. So there's angle 1, and it's congruent to angle 3. Here's angle 2. It has two lines, and it's congruent to angle 4, which also has two lines. Okay, so that's how we mark it in a picture. So there's vertical angles. These are some things you should be familiar with, again, as we're building our vocabulary early on in geometry. Go ahead and complete the tissue box activity and homework. Feel free to phone a friend if you need help with the tissue box activity, but please try to do the homework independently. If you have questions, please email me.